Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me once again. You are always most welcome. Well, it's been a few weeks, hasn't it? I've been a little bit busy, and probably some of you, one or two of you, starting to get a bit worried about me and thinking, has he died? Has he emigrated? Is he running away from the budget, the UK budget? Oh, let's not get into politics. Anyway, no, I've been a bit busy, really, just trying to get some momentum going and some building done with my Mosquito. Now, I haven't done a lot of actual airframe work, I haven't done any really, but you know what you see, and many of you will have seen the little posting I just posted a couple of photographs, very much what you see in front of you, which I'll zoom in on. You'll understand in a second why I've got this in my hand. I'll explain it, all will be revealed. But yeah, so we've got the, if you remember, I decided that I wanted to have the air crew. And so we've got Captain Percy Pickard, who is the pilot, Group Captain Pickard. And we've got Alan Broadley, who's the navigator. I decided I wanted Alan Broadley. You've got an option with this kit, you get 3 figures. Now one of them, Alan Broadley seated here. I have not, as you will appreciate, I haven't actually bothered. Yes, I've done some basic painting of the face, but that's it really. Decided not to go with the seated Alan Broadley. I wanted to have him on the, he'll ultimately be holding on to the ladder, not the paint part as you see it here. But yeah, so I've had to do some very fine work to try and paint these up. I'm certainly not claiming to be the best figure painter in the world. I'm just going to bring that one forward a bit more, let's get him into the same focus plane, there we go. There we are. I don't claim to be the best figure painter in the world, but my God, one thing that I've forgotten is 2 things really about figure painting. One, just how much time it takes, because I've been back and forthing with these things so many times, in terms of just getting the edging right when you're doing things like straps and necklines and stuff like that. And I haven't done any, these are not finished, so please don't judge them too much right now. They're not done yet, but they're work in progress. But we have got quite a lot of hours have gone into them, I've got to be honest. And it's just, I just forgot how time consuming they can be. Now, I use these I've got a tip for you. I use these metal pallets, you can buy them from art shops or whatever, or model shops and so on as well. Quite a lot of places do. And I couldn't believe that having got, you probably think it's got more than enough pallets there. Well, no, I didn't really. These soon got caked up, and I've got, just you can probably just see in the corner of the shot, if you can make it out, that probably can't there, but I've got, I don't know, about a dozen, maybe 20 different paints there. I've got all my flesh paints, my AK flesh acrylics I'm using, which have been very good. The Andrea ones, European one, I don't think there's any problem with them, but maybe they just don't agree with the thinners I'm using, because I've been using either the X20A or the AK acrylic thinner, which is just in the corner if you look over there. Anyway, it hasn't worked so well, and I sort of dropped the Andrea paints. I'm sure they work with the right thinner, they probably work fine, but they seem very clumpy and they weren't going down well, so I dropped them, went to the AKs. Anyway, point of the story is these got gunged up with very quickly, got them really gunged up, and in the course of 2 or 3 hours these were all completely chocked up with paint and horrible. And then I had a brainwave and I realised that rather than trying to paint them one by one, which was horrible because I was having to use my deadly solvent, or IPA, which is not much better, it's really hard work to get the paint out. But I've discovered the quick way of doing this. So if you've got these, there's only one here that hasn't worked because I got some enamel on it. That's fine. The enamel stuck to it properly. So if you are using acrylics, you can put these in the dishwasher. So this is what I've ended up doing: put them in the dishwasher, and they come out fine. You don't have to go particularly hot either. Just the usual sort of 40-45 degrees, something like that, does the job, and they come out all clean again. So that is saving me a lot of time. But I say the painting of these figures is tricky, and I just haven't done it for a while, and I just forgot how much effort has to go into it, how accurate you've got to be. Getting the eyes right is really hard. I don't think I'm 100% satisfied with them, but I think they're probably good enough. Now I've got this huge paintbrush in my hand for one simple reason, really, for a gag, you might say. But joking apart, I've got I've got two sets of, I have sort of very fine and medium brushes in a tub. This is just the fine and medium ones that I use. And then I've got bigger brushes in my big tub here. Zoom in slightly. So that's the big tub with all the big stuff in it. And I've got about 30 different ones. I've got many of these fine brushes. And I talked about them recently. I talked about the broken toad, which sadly the company's gone out of business. Well, I managed to acquire a couple of these broken toads just a couple of weeks ago, actually on eBay. So there are still people that have got them unused, brand new ones. So I actually did get myself, the two you see are brand new. They have not been seen before. There they are, broken toad. Very nice. It's a sort of a medium and a very fine. And it is kind of super fine, this one, if we can just, yeah, try and get that in. See what I mean? Nice fine brush. However, I've got to say that it's amazing how your perception changes when you start doing this ultra fine work. I think it's one thing doing it on things like switches in cockpits and all that kind of stuff, because you can, it's probably easier to get away with a little error here or there if the brush doesn't quite go exactly where you want. But this is amongst the finest. I've also got another super fine one of the little Tamiya ones, which has got the tiniest, so it's only about 3-4 millimeters long, and a very fine brush again there. But when you start doing this a lot of work on small figures like this, in 30 seconds they're not that small, I know, but because they are 30 seconds, you feel obliged to do it properly. And it feels like I'm using one of these. And I've got my heavy magnifying glasses on, and I've also got the Optivisor, the magnifiers over the top of them as well. And the truth is, when you get down, I'm looking at, and it just feels that these what I thought were tiny superfine brushes feels like using this. It's like it feels too big. Everything feels too clumsy, and I don't know. Hard work, and it's taken quite a bit of time. So there's probably 2 or 3 days worth of work in those figures already, and they're not finished yet. Some of you may have also seen. I'll just get my instructions here. I'll zoom you in for this. Some of you might also have seen that I've got the goggles which they're going to be wearing, and these are pretty fine. I'll tell you. Let me just zoom in here first of all. Are we at maximum zoom? Doesn't look like max to me. No, we've got a bit more to go yet. So here's the goggles. Can you see those? Aren't they cool? They're really good, aren't they? So they are very nicely moulded by Tamiya. These are clear goggles. So they've got to go on as well. So that is where we are at. But the good news is I've made some proper progress this time, and in terms of the overall build of this kit, which is taking forever obviously, but this was the mental stumbling block, I think. This was the barrier, the hurdle that I was thinking, oh, I've got to do all these, you know, I've got to do all these figures, and I've got these safety harness parachute straps to do, and it's going to be an absolute nightmare. Well, I've broken the back of it, you know, I've not got so much to do left now, so hopefully it won't be long before I can proper crack on. Once I can get them seated in, I mean, I've almost got it already here, getting him seated in his positions, a little bit of weathering needed and a little bit of detailing up needed on some of the clothing, because I think yellow looks a bit too vivid, a bit bright. So a little bit of weathering here and there just to tone it down a little bit, and then we're off and running, I think. And I'm fairly pleased with them, I've got to say. I think they've come out kind of as well as I'd hoped. Not particularly better, but not worse either. They're thereabouts what I'd expect. I think once they've got their goggles on, they're going to look a little bit more. Yeah, they're going to be. Just show this shot broadly around the back, as you can see. He's got these the parachute straps and things that he's got, which you can't see from the photo I showed. So yeah, it's all right, isn't it? It's okay. Acceptable, I think, is the term I'd use. So that's him and the figures. So we're well underway with those. So the next briefing I expect will be at the end on the Mosquito. It's going to be at the end of November. Sorry, brushes away. All of them, including the big one. And when I give you that briefing at the end of November, that will be a bit more solid progress on the aircraft, I think. Once we get the figures done, that is the hardest thing, I think, for me. I think everything else I've done before fairly recently with the Spitfire. I'm thinking of the Merlin engines, obviously I know there's two of them, but whether I actually detail up both of them or not, I'm not sure. But it's all stuff that's I have a higher level of confidence with, let's put it that way. The figures are always a stumbling block for many of us, I think. If you're not a figure painter, they fill people with dread, don't they? And I can see why. Anyway, enough of that. So that's the update on the Mosquito. So there'll be more to come. At least now I've been able to actually show I've done something, some meaningful progress. And I mean, things like that, I just share with you the faces. So there's actually 4 different shades of flesh on the face. It's not apparent. But you've got light flesh, which is ultimately on the sort of the cheeks and the tops of the nose, which is just a slight highlighting. And you've got, sorry, beg your pardon, light flesh, over here actually, hidden it away. Light flesh is the base colour, is the base sort of for the more shadowy areas, sort of under the chin and under in the eye, the sort of recesses of the eyes and places like that, under the nose, etc. Light flesh is the highlighter. Then there's some shadow flesh which ends up being like pinking up the lips and things like that. And what's the other one? The final one, base flesh. Didn't use a lot of base flesh, just put a spot of it in the mix. But I've had to go back and forth because at first they just looked too toy-like, and I had to sort of re-highlight certain areas and darken others, correcting around the eyes as well. Sorry, I'm just going to check my lamp here isn't too healthy. No, the battery's going. But you look at it and you think, how did I end up spending all these hours just doing the faces? It's incredible, you know. But there's a little bit of weathering to be done on things like the leather helmets and stuff like that. So, as I say, they're not finished yet. They're a work in progress. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get to the main business of the day, which is the brand new Kotare Spitfire Mk.Va. And here it is, just arrived from New Zealand. Been waiting for this all year. Obviously, Kotare announced it at the start of this year. And it's their 1/32 scale latest derivative of the Spitfire. So why don't we take a look at that. Now we did have back in, I think was it February, March, we had Spitfire Night where I showed the Brian Lane Spitfire which had come out not much sooner, just before. And we also had the Mark 1 early Spitfire, the 2-bladed prop. So obviously this is like a late 1940, early 1941 aircraft, when they started to make modifications, and the details are thus. I'll give you a bit of a reading of what it says on the side. The legendary Supermarine Spitfire is undoubtedly one of the most famous and perhaps the most beautiful aircraft of all time. Designed in 1934 under the guidance of the Supermarine Aviation Works chief designer Reginald J. Mitchell, Joseph Smith and Alf Faddy, the prototype flew on the 5th of March 1936. It was immediately obvious this was something very special, and an initial production order was placed in early June 36. So they got an order in fairly early. The 1030 horsepower Rolls-Royce Merlin 2/3 powered 8 Browning 303 machine gun armed Spitfire Mark 1 entered service mid-May 1938. That's the early version. The 1150 Rolls-Royce Merlin 12, I beg your pardon, Merlin 12 powered Spitfire Mark 2 and 2B featured many of the later Mark 1A improvements, although the key difference was the 1150 horsepower Rolls-Royce Merlin 12 engine. A 1390 Rolls-Royce Merlin 20 version powered the Spitfire Mark III, had been in development since January 1940, but in early 1941 there was an urgent need for improved performance. Well, of course, any of you that watched my Battle of Britain video will know the story about the carburetor problems and the negative G cutting out of the carburetors. The installation of the 1440 Rolls-Royce Merlin 45 into 93 late production Mark 1A airframes in the Spitfire production line, thereby created the stopgap Mark 5A. So it's a Mark 1A with this more advanced Merlin engine and other changes which we'll discuss in a minute. Another 82 of these were ordered, and a total of 211 Spitfire Mark 5As were produced. Now on the side we have got, so it's basically a more powerful battle brick than Spitfire is one way of thinking of it, although it's too late for the battle brick, I think, this one. So, on the side we have got 3 options, markings. And we've got Liverpool 3, which was T.D. Williams, R.A. Johnson, W.G. Smith, M.J. Smith, J.F. Reeves, D.F.S., all of 611 Squadron. Obviously they shared the aircraft, which is common in wartime. Then we have got the Swan, which is J. Stokoe, Pilot Officer Page, J.W. Panther, Charles N. Orton and C. Cookson, 54 Squadron, June to July 41. And then, of course, Lord Lloyd I, which is Douglas Bader's aircraft, on the Tangmere wing in August 1941. Now, a quick word about Douglas Bader, for those of you that are not familiar. If you're not familiar, you need to see the film Reach for the Sky, really. Old black and white film. Douglas Bader, of course, was one of the top aces of the Royal Air Force in World War II, fighter aces, and he was credited with 22 victories, which is a lot. It's almost 5 times as many as you need to be considered an ace. But of course, he had this horrible accident in 1934, thereabouts, in the early mid-30s, where he had this terrible accident, showing off really in an Avro plane. I think it was a biplane. And he did this slow roll and misjudged it and caught the ground with his wingtips and had this horrible accident at Woodley Aerodrome near Reading, which Woodley Aerodrome has got a slight connection with me actually, because I actually worked for a company back in the early 90s. I worked for a company called Cello Glass, and they were actually headquarters on the industrial estate, just basically on the what was the parts of the old airfield perimeter where there was an industrial estate got built after the war. Anyway, I digress. So Bader lost both his legs and nearly died. Both legs amputated above the knee, I think it was, and ended up with these artificial limbs they made for him. It's all in the film. And of course it didn't hold him back at all. He was such a daredevil pilot and so determined to succeed. Very much in the sort of the mould of the racing driver Alex Zanardi more recently. Similar sort of story there, and wasn't going to be stopped by having no legs, and he went on to become this fighter ace with no legs. Incredible story. Anyway, before we get into the kit, I just want to say two really, about the kit itself. First of all, this kit has just arrived directly from New Zealand. In fact, I'm looking over at the outer box, which has got Kotare markings all over it. But it's not my property, so I'm afraid I can't open the bags. This belongs to a friend of mine. And it has been imported directly from New Zealand, so it's I think it's arrived about a week or so, maybe a couple of weeks before the stock will arrive in the UK on the boat, so to speak. And the second thing is, I'm a bit surprised, given the Douglas Bader connection with the markings. I'm surprised they didn't do a figure edition of it with Douglas Bader figure, because of course they did the brilliant Brian Lane edition, which was absolutely fantastic. And I bought that, and several friends of mine bought it as well, I know. And I think we've all been very pleased with it. I'm just a bit surprised they didn't make this a Douglas Bader edition, you know. But anyway, perhaps they'll do that with another version, or perhaps they'll indeed do a special figure limited edition boxing. And of course, it won't have an engine. That's the other thing I was going to mention. It won't have a Merlin engine in it, because Kotare they want to produce a curbside type model, so they don't go for engines. So just to let you know. Anyway, without further ado, we shall open the box. There's not much more to say. Let's open the box. As I say, it isn't my property, and I can't open the bags. I will, however, draw your attention. In fact, we'll just have a quick chat about that. What the differences are in terms of the practical differences on the model that you would see versus the Mark 1, if you've got the Mark 1 kit with Brian Lane or whatever. It says, and this is from Kotare's own website, it says, released on the 15th of October 2024, there's 142 high-quality injection moulded parts. It's quite a low part count, which is, because there is no engine, but they do go out of their way to keep it low, deliberately. It says, there are 40 all new tool parts that include the windscreen with de-icing, hood with Martin Baker jettison system, on the canopy. Not to be confused with the ejector seat, okay. Fireproof bulkhead, dual height rudder pedals, instrument panel with rectangle and curved blind flying panels, elevator trimming wheel, ice snow guard. Ice snow guard. I presume that's on the filters or something. On the intakes, I think. Engine driven undercarriage controls, composite pilot seat with and without the Sutton Type K harness detail, which they're very good at, the beautiful little thin harnesses. IFF Mark II port wing fillets with electrical connection door, you'll see that in a second. Mark V oil cooler fairings, different from the earlier versions. Station keeping lamps, optional Supermarine and CBAF undercarriage doors and engine top cowlings, open and close cockpit doors, 2 options. De Havilland and Rotol propeller options. Wheels with weighted tyres featuring the correct alignment and a 28-page instruction book and high quality cartograph decals, including the ones for Douglas Bader. So there you go. So that's what you're getting different to your previous kits. So just bear with me a moment. I'm going to be handling this a little bit carefully. I'll say it's not mine. I don't own it. Therefore, we can't open the bags. So we've got some extras by the look of it here. Okay. Ooh, looks like we've got some interesting extras. I think we've got some sort of print here. Okay. It's an envelope. The envelope? Oh, it's not. It's just like a cover. Oh, so you get a print. Oh, that's very nice. It's nice and thick as well. So it's Darrell Legg's artwork print. Be careful so I don't crease this. We're holding it a little bit awkwardly, but it'll be better for the print. Look at that. So that's the Darrell Legg print. Douglas Bader himself at the controls. Lord Lloyd, number 1, Douglas Bader, August 1941. There he is. How about that? That's very nice. So that's a little bonus you do get in the kit. They didn't put a figure of Bader in, which I would have preferred, if I'm honest. But anyway. Now, many of you will hear me complain frequently about instructions. You won't hear that today. Because the instructions that come in these kits are absolutely fantastic. Now, it's unfortunate, as I say, that I can't open the bags, but that's the price I'm paying for having it here early. But if anybody else wants me to go through the kit at a later date in more detail and open the bags, then by all means send it to me. A lot of the kit we have seen before though already. Now then, we've got some really beautiful looking decals and the cartograph, so we know the quality is going to be absolutely perfect. No need to get too concerned about them. We can see here we've got the variants for Bader. Kotare always have a strong New Zealand, understandably, have a strong New Zealand interest in some of these squadrons. So the KLM, I know that's a squadron that's got the Kiwis in it. Aldea was in one of their aircraft, wasn't he? In the KLB. Which, did they have Aldea's markings in the other one? I'm trying to remember. I don't think so. Which squadron was that again? Just remind myself. Yeah, that's 54 Squadron, of course. So yeah, you've got everything you need there basically. We won't dwell on that for too long. What we will dwell on though is, I better tell you by the way, apart from the plastic, we've got some extras. We've got some rather natty looking exhausts, and again, any of you that have followed my Spitfire Mk.Va build from Tamiya, or indeed the reviews I've done on the Airfix 24 scale Spitfires, the recent ones, the Mark 8 and the Mark 9, know that I do grumble about exhaust for good reasons, which I'll explain later. Anyway, I'm not going to read everything that's on the front there because you've already heard some of it, but it goes into even more detail about the Spitfire, and then inside it gives you the engine performance and the aircraft performance. So it tells you maximum weight of just under 3 tons. Pretty light, that, isn't it? And it's not much heavier than some of these Range Rovers or some of these SUV vehicles that are driving around. Maximum speed 375 miles per hour, so that's up about 25-30 miles an hour, I think, on the standard Mark 1. And then maximum height 37,700 feet, 8 303 Browning machine guns, produced from March till June 1941, so just March, April, May. 3 months, isn't it, really? So, inside, zoom you in. We'll have a nice experience. We always enjoy looking through either Wingnut Wings or Kotare's instructions. So it's got all your sprues, does identify the parts you're not going to use for this particular variant. So for example, you've got the, I think could be wrong on this, but I think the rotor propeller is the one you don't use, but it'll all be explained when we get into it, and here we go. So, building up your cockpit, nice detail, they have these beautiful photographs down there to help you, leaving you in no doubt about what things should be looking like, which is so in contrast to our Far Eastern suppliers from people like manufacturers like Great Wall Hobby and Border and all these other people that can't be bothered with the instructions. So you start off with the instrument panel, and then you're building up the floor of the cockpit, complete with the bar with the rudder pedals, rudder controls on it. Then you've got your stick, and then you've got this option with or without the pilot's seat, with just plain padding and or with the parachute straps. Sorry, the seat belts, I should say, not parachute straps. Seat belt straps. Got the flare rack. Armour plate, very crude looking armour plate there that's going in behind the pilot's seat. And then you got the Linotex sealed 48 gallon upper and 37 gallon lower tanks. So not huge, are they? 48 gallons, it's not big, it's not as big as a car. It is in total, I suppose, similar to a car's capacity there. But I think the fuel tanks in the wings on the Spit as well, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong there. It doesn't sound a lot of fuel, that, to me, that's all. Then you've got the headrest going in, you've got the bulkhead. Now this is the only thing about Kotare that slightly disappoints me in terms of the engineering. And I think it's the only thing I can think of, really, and that's that they don't mould the holes in the frame that holds the back of the seat on it. You have to drill them out, the holes, which I'm not sure why they couldn't do some maybe slide moulding and have that moulded. I think that would have been nicer. However, it's just a little bit of extra work, but it seems a tad unnecessary to me to have to do that. But anyway, that's just me. And then we have got those frames going in, complete with the oxygen bottles, and you've got and again, look at the detail here. We're being told exactly what these things are. They're not just arrows vaguely pointing in a direction with no information about what on earth these things are. It says camera gun control mount, engine driven undercarriage control unit, IFF self-destruct, yeah, radio receiver, IFF Mark II radio receiver. It's all here, isn't it? Engine driven undercarriage control unit, and there's a lovely photo of it as well, look. I mean, that's what we want. This is what we want in our model kits. We want to learn about the aircraft, not just have to try and scratch our head and try and figure out how to throw it together and not really learn anything about what we're throwing together, especially not at this price. And this is where Kotare do justify their price, I think. Then we've got the fuselage side, and this is what I was saying earlier on about they try to minimise the part count. They've got some more holes to drill there, annoyingly, but anyway. But they have these large sections with all the detail pre-moulded in, so you don't have things like the oxygen bottles. You can see them there. Normally these are all separate parts. On a Tamiya, for example, you have to assemble all these parts and attach them to the side of the cockpit. Well, you don't here, it's all in one piece. So that does reduce your build time a little bit. But then we've got some rigging, and this is obviously for the rudder control lines, the rudder, and also for the stick, for the elevator and the ailerons as well. So a little bit of work there to do. Then we get this lovely sort of image where it shows you the colours, so you're left in no doubt about what colours you're supposed to be painting. We'll try and find that on a border model, because you won't. So beautifully done, aren't they? Absolute exquisite, you know, clarity, the instructions. You know, every item is shown in the colour it should be. You're not left guessing. Absolutely lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Be like that. Then over on this side, we've got markings, and it's the cutout area for Plessy flare device hole details from Spitfire 5B. This device was introduced into production in the downward firing position from mid-1940. Also the parachute landing flare door. So they could drop flares. I think this is when they're using them to mark targets for the bombers, I presume. Interesting. Cine camera, footage indicator. Again, everything's been explained here. Raised rivet, wireless door. Telling you how to paint the fuselage, the areas that's going to be visible, what colours you should paint it. And then you put in your prop shaft and bringing the two halves of the fuselage together. Spare filaments for the reflector gun sight. Look at that here. Amazing. So basically spare bulbs essentially. That's fantastic. Starboard engine cowling from Spitfire Mk.Va. Note the new lower drain overflow outlet position introduced on the Merlin 45 engine. The triple ejector nozzle outlet exhaust manifolds and the de Havilland propeller and spinner. All shown there. There you can see how the oil's draining out there by the marks it's left. Fuselage exterior. Here we go with the upward facing signal light seen on the Mark V Spitfire. Wow. Rigging, there's some rigging to be shown as well. Ooh, it's quite detailed, isn't it? There's a bit more rigging than I imagined on this Spitfire, to be honest. You get your tailplanes going in and you have this lovely spine design to avoid any seam join of the two halves of the fuselage coming together, which Kotare are rather cleverly incorporating into these kits. Cut holes for station keeping lamp windows. Station keeping lamp windows. Okay. And then you've got your cowls going on here. Shows a close up of the GM2 reflector gun sight. The starboard tailplane detail. Starboard tailplane detail. From Supermarines at Eastleigh, built late production Spitfire. Mark 1A 7157, completed in February 41. Note the data plaque and the lightning holes in the outer rib of the tailplane. Clearly see that. And they got the option, this option of cockpit door open or closed. You've got your tailplane elevators basically, and you've got the option to have them either deflected or straight if you wish. And you've got a different fillet which will lock it in position. If you have it one way or the other, you've got two different fillets. He says A19, A19. No, it's not. It's just explaining the position of it before and after. Then we've got some really nice pictures of the original actual aircraft. Port elevator detail from a late production 616 Squadron Spitfire Mark 1A, September 1940. Note the hinged cutouts. The hinge cutouts, clearly visible here. And the subtle rib stitching and the lack of scalloping on the tightly doped fabric covering the surface at the back, the elevator surface. Also note the lack of pre and post shading effect on either side of the rib. The lack of pre and post shading effects. Okay. Supermarines at Eastleigh here, and it says this was one of the early Mark 1 Spitfires that was converted to 5A. Completed originally on June 1939, and then converted in February 41. Mid 41 it was converted to the Merlin 45 powered Mark 5A, at which time it appears to have been retrofitted with all the available modifications. Note the later style exhaust manifolds, the lever type door release, Lever type door release. Okay, yes. And the voltage regulator behind the pilot's headrest. Okay. Freshly repainted electrical and radio socket door in the port wing fillet. So she's there. Oops, she's there. We'll see that on the kit in a second. And the tapered TR1133 aerial mast, which is here. Also note the ill-fitting engine cowlings. Now this is a common feature, isn't it, on Spitfires? I think people get a little bit upset sometimes and think that on some of these kits, and it's very evident with the Kotare actually, they do portray it really well, accurately, because some of these Spitfires, they don't fit well, the panels, especially the cowlings around the engine and the fuel tank. They have this overlap and it all looks very crude, to be quite honest. But they have locking connectors that hold them securely in place, but they don't look that great. They don't look that great. Not the smoothest and most aerodynamic presentation ever. Anyway, then we're on to the actual wings, and we've got our guns here as well. So you can see you've got your 303 machine gun muzzles going in. Interior drill holes for more detail. So you've got to drill a hole for the muzzle. I'm a bit disappointed with that actually. Just don't know why Kotare can't do a bit of slide moulding here really, like others do. You know, you see a lot of kits now where you've got slide moulded muzzles, gun muzzles, and they're really nice. Interesting. And then you've got one here where it's just pointing out a couple of other details at the back end. Plastic recognition flares. Some of these flares are used, of course, when there's poor visibility. They'll fire off a recognition flare that is a certain colour that only the RAF would use, and they know it's a friendly aircraft, that sort of thing. Then you've got your main upper wings coming down, and it's talking about the wheel wells and the gun camera on the port wing here. Sometimes this was covered with doped-on linen or self-adhesive fabric patches, similar to the gun ports. Note the ill-fitting panels again. Yeah, you can kind of see that. I'm singing a bit more for this one. There we go. And there you've got there. So you've got to drill out the gun port. Now that's kind of more understandable, but again, a lot of drilling to do, isn't there? There's a bit too much drilling in this kit, if I'm honest. Aileron starboard, Aero Engines Limited. Yeah, just limited. Not sure what they mean by that. Must be they must have got some copyright or something. And then you've got this fillet, which has got this electrical connector port in it. You can just about make it out just above my thumb there. See that? So that's another change from the Mark 1. Then you've got your radiator and your oil coolers, and these have got slightly different shaping to them than you got on the Mark 1 Spitfire. Very subtle, I think, but I think they just waste in a bit more. And the Mark 1, I think they're a bit straighter looking. I think they made them a little bit more aerodynamic than these later versions. It says radiator fairing detail on a production 19 Squadron Spitfire. Note the radiator flap detail on the fuel tank vent pipe. Underside wheel wells and radiator fairing have been painted Sky Type S at the factory. The Mark 5A oil cooler and fairing, were enlarged, round opening introduced for the more powerful Mark 5 engine. Note the ill-fitting full-length rear section. Okay. Main planes and fuselage assembly. This is basically just showing the fuselage and the wings coming together, and the oil tank and the bottom cowlings, and again imperfectly fitting panels. There's some rather strange sort of overlapping of the panels there again. Zoom it back slightly here. Then we've got all these parts coming together. You're bringing in the undercarriage and the gear legs. You've got here's the ice guard. I was right about the ice guard. It is actually a ice guard that goes on the front of the intake. So it's basically a heated element, I think, just to stop any ice from forming on the front of the actual intake. So it's for the carburetor intake, of course, that one. And then we have got this beautiful clarity in the instructions showing you the exact alignment, how everything should look, and the correct way that your undercarriage legs should look when they've been fitted. It says the underside undercarriage struts, wheel wells, wheel hubs on the insides of the doors, all painted in Sky Type S. Then we get to the other details. We got to the you've got the de Havilland, not the Rotal. The Rotal was the earlier one, Mark 1, Mark 2. They moved on to the de Havilland DH5/39 spinner and prop. And you've got your Pob Joy air and motor aircraft and aircraft built rudder. So it just shows how they're subcontracting various elements of the production. So the rudder was built by a different company. And then there's a weakness here in the kit that the owner, my friend, the owner of this, has actually stepped around by getting the optional Kotare resin exhausts. Because when I first saw them, I looked down and I thought, oh, I'm not sure what he's bought those for, because the standard ones look quite nice. And then I didn't realise, the penny dropped, that they're actually in two halves. And then it became much clearer why he's gone for these one-piece resin elements for the actual exhaust. It's quite obvious that's superior, you know. You've got the undercarriage down indicators. Oh, they're like a little pit. It sort of exaggerates it because of the way it shows it here, and the undercarriage down indicators, but they're actually just a little pit that sticks up when the undercarriage is down. It's a visual aid for the pilot. And then you've got these slightly later version of this exhaust, the exhaust stubs themselves. But as I mentioned, I would certainly agree with the owner of this kit has bought these Kotare aftermarket resin ones, which are far superior. But it does then talk about the markings on the exhaust manifolds here. Got some quite interesting markings on the underside of them. And then we've got the canopy, which has got this Martin Baker hood release jettison type. So this is type of hood that can actually be literally jettisoned in an emergency when the pilot needs to bail out. Just come over to this side, there we go. So this is one that can, instead of just sliding it back, it can just jettison the hood completely. Far better than trying to fight your way out of a sticky canopy. And it says here, photograph, note the cables and the release bars of the Martin hood release system, Martin Baker hood release system, jettison system introduced in the middle of 1941. Wow. Interesting. So obviously it pulls on a, there's also some windscreen detail here. Windscreen detail from Mark 5A served with the 61 operational training unit in 1942. Horizontal tube for dispensing de-icer fluid. Oh yes, along the front, look. Here, interesting. Okay. So this is de-icer, presumably just sprays it on really. And then it coats it, the aerodynamics help it coat. There's no windscreen wiper obviously. It's just there as a layer to stop ice forming, I suppose. You can see the hood release jettison system. 20. So I guess it just flicks out. It just releases it from its normal, with some catches really. And then you got some rigging, of course, always tricky. Rigging for the aerials, the IFF Mark II aerials. They dropped this, of course, later on the Mark 9 Spitfires. It didn't run through the entire model range of Spitfire. Then we got zoom you back. We've got our stencils. Then we're getting towards the end here. So stencil detail. They've printed that very faintly, the actual Spitfire, I must say. And then we've got some nice, lovely photos at the end, pointing out various things. Just showing one or two of the details to watch out for. And then finally we've got our colour callouts, and we've got here, this is the 611 Squadron. It doesn't say where they're stationed. What does it? It doesn't say actually. Supermarine Eastleigh built this model. I think it might have been up north of Newcastle on Tyne, because it mentions Newcastle on Tyne there. And then over here, this is Fruitation. It's the nickname of this one, Fruitation. And does it say where they were based? Doesn't really tell us a lot, to be honest. It just tells you a bit more about the pilots who flew these heroes that flew these aircraft. And obviously here we've got one shot down. Looks like the Germans have captured it, frankly. So it's probably over northern France. And then we've got the 54 Squadron. There's a big write-up here as well to go with it. And then finally, last but not least, of course, quite a lot of detail actually. It says that Christopher Cookson was actually joined 54 Squadron in February 1940, and he was flying the squadron. He was shot down and killed. Oh, that was M. Interesting. Oh. And again, you got the Germans have captured the one that's got the E on the tail. Same squadron. He was shot down, he was captured, obviously he survived. And then finally we've got our old friend Douglas Bader at the Tangmere Wing in August 1941. There's some great photos here, pictures of Bader, look, with his hand on the side there from the archives. And he's there with a couple of his buddies from the squadron. And there's several photos here from the Dilip Sakar archives, who you can see on YouTube, by the way. He does a lot of historical talks about some of these Spitfires, and he's a bit of a historian, you know. And he seems to have his own archive of photographs. Tells you all the correct colours, and then there's various reference photos near the end. And there we sort of come to the end of our instruction. Very, very impressive instructions, as usual. Pointing out one or two details, and then of course all the people at Kotare who made it possible. So, there we go. Now then, I have got a little tiny money spider who's about to come across my camera lens, so I'm just going to remove him very humanely and let him go to ground. Out of camera shot. Right, that was very impressive, as ever they are. Now then, let's have a look at it. Now here's one part I can show you. Now I'll just say I can't open these bags, but let me just give you an idea what the problem is here. Now some of you will remember that I moaned about the Tamiya exhaust stubs on the Spitfire Mk.Va in 32nd scale, because to my amazement Tamiya had put the sprue gate contact points on the face, right on the face, the bit that you see of the exhaust stub, and this meant that on that particular aircraft, the later model Spitz, it has these fishtail designed exhaust stubs, and they have a weld seam on the real aircraft that runs right down it, and this ruined the weld seam. So it made it a real nightmare. And then to my amazement, for reasons not clear to me, Airfix copied the exact same mistake on the 24 scale, which makes it worse really. Obviously their designers never built the one from Tamiya, didn't spot the error. And they have got the same problem, so it makes it quite hard on the Airfix 24 scale one to get the desired result. Now here we don't have that problem, in that Kotare have actually put the sprue gate contact point exactly in the right position, but unfortunately for some strange reason, instead of moulding it as one, as you can see there are 4 of these, because they moulded them in halves. So we've got them moulded in half, so you're going to have a nasty seam line anyway, which it shouldn't have on this particular aircraft. This is not like the later models. So here we have the Kotare Spitfire triple ejector exhaust nozzles, and this we are going to have a jolly good look at because it's in a resealable bag. So let me have a look at these for you. How about those? Now not only have they got around the seam or the joint problem, but they've actually even on these resin ones, they've gone and put the resin contact point to the sprue in exactly the right place where it won't be seen. It doesn't matter. Not in the middle of the face somewhere like that, like Airfix and Tamiya did. Now if we have a good look at these, you can see how very, very nice they do look. Very, very detailed indeed. Yeah, those are beautiful, aren't they? Really, really nice. So I think that's a definite sort of recommendation from me. I think if you're going to buy one of these, you almost certainly want to get yourself that one extra, because it's the one obvious weakness really in the kit. Again, I would say to Kotare, you know, you've got a lot of drilling going on in this kit, a lot of work for drilling. It's all very well saying that we have the cockpit sides moulded in one piece, so it's easier for the modeller, but then you go and have them drilling 30 or 40 holes. And then in this case we've got rather an ill-conceived exhaust, which they have corrected, but you know, you've got to pay extra for it. So my point is, perhaps they could think about this a bit more really. Then we have got our de Havilland, pretty sure this is the de Havilland, later spinner and propeller, which looks really nice. I say it's a little tricky because it's in the bag and I can't open the bag, but there we go. So there's our de Havilland later spinner and prop, which is very nice. You've also got here that optional, the seat, where you've got the option of the with or without the seat belts. Without on the left, with on the right, which is very nice as well. Lots of fine detail, some of which we can't see. Well, this is one I must draw your attention to, because this I think this piece actually is this is sprue G and H, and these are definitely two of the sprues that these are the additional items for this particular version. So we've got a slight difference in the instrumentation. We've got this fillet here, which if I can get the zoom in, you can just about make out just above my thumb is where you've got that little round hatch, which is the connector, electrical connector. And there we go. So that's a load of parts that are Mark 5A specific. Then we get the generic parts, part sprue B, and again this is where you can see what I was talking about here with the things like the oxygen bottles, and all the detail of the sidewall of the cockpit is actually moulded in for you already. So we have got a lot less work to do in terms of actually assembling and fitting all these little parts and levers and control surfaces. Same on the opposite side there. There's an oxygen bottle there that's already fitted. Then we've got our later. This has got the quick jettison Martin Baker canopy, and I think it is you've got open or closed options. So all of this is in fact to be used in the kit. You've just got the open or closed option there as a separate. You've got the rear window there, and then you've got the closed or the open. There's two separates here. That's that one. And then, and again, there's no point really in me going through these. So I can't open the bags anyway, but these you've seen in the previous reviews I've done anyway. So these are generic Spitfire parts that have not changed, in fact. None of the parts in that sprue are different from the original kit. Same again with the wing. And then here, sprue A. Again, these are not different from the original kit. So this is basically got the Rotol spinner and propeller, as opposed to the de Havilland one, which was used later. So this is the earlier version, but you can see there you've got your nice weight on wheels. More zoom perhaps, hang on a second, there we go. See, we've got weight on wheels. Which do look nice, in fairness. I've got to say those are excellent. Got to make sure you put them in the right position, of course. And then you've got this, as I talked about, the split exhausts. Well, of course, if you get this aftermarket option, you won't need to worry about that. You don't need to worry about it. And then the rest of the parts really here are generic to the normal Kotare Spitfire kits. And there you have it. So, yes, I'm sorry I couldn't open the bags, but I say this is not my property, and it has just arrived hot from New Zealand on a plane, came by airmail. So it's a very much anticipated item, owned by somebody else, so we can't go hacking into the bags on this occasion, unfortunately. But you do get to see, for those of you that have already got one of these, the other versions, you do get to see the differences. Hope you found that interesting. I'm going to give it, in terms of a score, I think I'll give it 9.25 out of 10. I was a little bit just disappointed they couldn't have done a Douglas Bader figure. I thought that would have been an ideal opportunity and would make that kit sell like hotcakes, because they always sell well when they have a figure, but Douglas Bader is such a well-known character. I'm sure they could have done as a nice resin figure to go with it and made it a special edition, you know, and they'd have got more margin probably out of that as well. The only other thing I wasn't so keen on is the fact that the standard kit has got this strange exhaust. It's like nobody quite gets the exhaust right on these Spitfires. I don't know why. Because, you know, with obviously they sidestep the problem by going to the resin. Well, there we go. And all the holes to drill. That's too many, I think. Too many holes. Especially things like the framework. You know, in the actual the bulkhead frames, those spar frames that go down the fuselage. That first one really should have the holes already in it. It should be moulded in. It's a lot of faffing about, and I'm not sure that, you know, other manufacturers, including, you know. Pretty sure that am I right in saying that the Tamiya one was already drilled for you? I can't remember now, but anyway, I would expect it a 32nd or bigger to be drilled out, you know. I know that Airfix did it, didn't they, on the 24 scale, so yeah, just, it's beautiful. The parts are so perfectly formed, there's no flash or anything like that. Absolutely beautifully engineered. Just one or two of the design choices they've made that I think I would question, I still question personally. The lack of engine, I appreciate that would raise the price and that everybody wants that, and they have obviously decided no, we're not going to do engines, but I still think it's a mistake. I think that they should offer it as an option, maybe if they there's this South African company, is it Mk.Va they call, I can't remember, but they do offer an engine that will fit this, but I do think Kotare should offer it as an option. Maybe they could do a deal with that company, and, you know, there's ways of doing it. Just to not offer an engine at all at that scale still leaves a slightly sour taste in the mouth for me. But they are beautiful things, and those instructions are peerless. Nothing comes close to those instructions, even Tamiya. Yeah. So, you know, I don't want to sound like I'm on a downer about them at all, because they are, some things they're getting right on a completely another level to other manufacturers. So 9.25 out of 10 is where I'm at. Hope you enjoyed seeing that. I think it's one of the first ones to arrive in the UK. Hope you give me a thumbs up and give us a like. Helps the channel grow, and I've nearly got to 10,000 subscribers, so please keep subscribing. If you're watching this video and you haven't subscribed, it does help us. Please subscribe and join the band of almost the 10,000. And I will look forward to seeing you very soon. I'm going to be doing a little talk coming up in the next week or two about Telford and about some things we may or may not see at Telford. But I'm not going to say too much now, give the game away. Something that I think you can all get a little bit involved in terms of discussion and thoughts of your own. So I'll be back very soon. I'll be back, as Arnie used to say, very shortly, and you can enjoy. Looking forward to that one too. In the meantime, thanks very much for joining me. Hope you found it interesting. Please stay well, stay safe. Until the next time, look after yourselves. Thanks a lot, and bye for now.